The morning sun glinted off the steel of military jeeps as they rolled down Main Street in formation. One by one, they encircled the Copper Kettle Café, their engines humming with purpose. Uniformed soldiers stepped out in unison, forming a wall of silent dignity. Inside, cafe owner Martin Hargrove froze, coffee pot in hand, as his customer stared through the windows in disbelief. This wasn't a training exercise or a parade. This was a reckoning. Just 24 hours earlier, an elderly man with a silver medal pinned to his faded jacket had walked out of this same cafe with his head bowed in shame. Today, the military had arrived to deliver a message. What could a small-town cafe owner possibly have done to warrant such a response? What line had been crossed to bring military vehicles to his doorstep? Have you ever witnessed someone being disrespected and wished you could stand up for them? Have you seen how a single moment of cruelty can change everything? Or perhaps you've wondered what happens when a community decides that enough is enough. In Willowbrook, a town that prided itself on its connection to the nearby Fort Braddock military base, the answer came with the rumble of engines and the measured steps of soldiers who refused to let disrespect go unanswered. Today's story is about honor, community, and the powerful message sent when everyday heroes are mistreated. If this introduction has caught your attention, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue sharing these important stories that remind us all of the respect our veterans deserve. Willowbrook was the kind of town where neighbors still borrowed cups of sugar and mailmen knew everyone by name. Tree-lined streets led to a charming downtown where American flags hung from lampposts year-round. Just 3 miles east stood Fort Braddock, an army base that had trained soldiers for decades. The relationship between town and base ran deep. Many residents were former military who'd chosen to settle nearby after service, while others had family members stationed there. This connection gave Willowbrook a distinctive rhythm, with uniforms a common sight at local businesses and military ceremonies marking the town's calendar. The Copper Kettle occupied the corner of Main and Elm, housed in a brick building with large windows that caught the morning light. For 15 years, Martin Hargrove had built his cafe into a Willowbrook institution, known for apple pie that won ribbons at the county fair and coffee strong enough to put hair on your chest, as Martin liked to say. Locals gathered there daily. Teachers graded papers in corner booths, business deals closed over lunch, and first dates blossomed over shared desserts. Martin himself was a fixture behind the counter, his practiced smile and easy conversation making customers feel welcome. What customers didn't see was how Martin's smile tightened whenever uniformed personnel entered his cafe, how he'd find reasons to stay in the kitchen when veterans gathered for coffee. Few knew about his older brother James, who died overseas during a military operation gone wrong. Even fewer knew how that loss had calcified into bitterness over the years. Martin never refused service to military members that would damage business in a town like Willowbrook, but he kept interactions brief, mechanical, devoid of the warmth he showed other patrons. On that particular November morning, the Copper Kettle buzzed with its usual breakfast crowd. Lila, the youngest waitress on staff, moved between tables with coffee refills while Martin manned the register. A group of college students occupied the large corner table, their laughter occasionally rising above the gentle hum of conversation. It was against this backdrop of normalcy that the cafe door opened, its bell announcing the arrival of Harold Hal McIntyre. As the elderly man stepped inside, adjusting his faded green jacket with a silver medal pinned to the breast, no one could have predicted how his presence would forever alter the cafe's place in Willowbrook's story. Harold Hal McIntyre moved with careful steps as he entered the Copper Kettle. At 78, his 6-foot frame had begun to bend slightly with age, but he carried himself with unmistakable dignity. His silver hair was trimmed in a military-precise cut, and deep lines mapped a lifetime of experiences across his weathered face. Most striking was his faded green service jacket, clean, pressed, and clearly treasured. On its left breast gleamed a single Silver Star medal, awarded for gallantry in action during the Vietnam War. The medal caught light from the cafe windows, a small but powerful testament to extraordinary courage under fire. Hal's eyes, clear blue despite his years, scanned the room with the quiet assessment of a man who had learned long ago to notice everything. Hal selected a small table by the window, removed his flat cap, and placed it neatly beside him. This was his first visit to the Copper Kettle. Usually he frequented the diner near his apartment, but his doctor's appointment had brought him to this part of town. He nodded politely to nearby patrons, careful not to draw attention. When offered a menu, he requested simply coffee, black, and perhaps a slice of apple pie if it's fresh. His voice carried the gentle gravitas of someone who chose words carefully. He folded his hands on the table, patient, taking in the photographs of Willowbrook's history that lined the walls. Not once did he mention his service or draw attention to his medal. Lila Reynolds approached Hal's table with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. At 23, she was working at the Copper Kettle to fund nursing school. Her grandfather had served in Korea, and she'd grown up listening to his stories. When she spotted the silver star on Hal's jacket, recognition flashed across her face. "Your coffee, sir," she said, placing the cup down carefully. "And the pie just came out of the oven." Then, lowering her voice respectfully, she added, "Thank you for your service." Hal looked up, momentarily surprised by the acknowledgement. "Thank you, young lady," he replied. The exchange was brief, but Lila's sincerity had clearly touched him. She noticed his slightly trembling hands and discreetly placed extra napkins beside his plate before moving on to her other tables. From behind the counter, Martin's gaze drifted to the window table. At first, it was just another customer to track, but then the silver medal caught his eye. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. James had worn a similar jacket the last time Martin had seen him alive. The coffee pot in Martin's hand paused mid-pour, causing coffee to overflow slightly onto the counter. He quickly corrected himself, wiping up the spill with unnecessary force. Throughout the next 15 minutes, his eyes returned to Hal's table repeatedly, his expression growing increasingly distant. When Lila passed by with the coffee pot, Martin stopped her with a hand on her arm. "Who's the old-timer?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "I'm not sure," Lila replied. "First time I've seen him. He has a silver star, though." Martin nodded once, his lips forming a thin line as he turned away. Hal finished his pie slowly, savoring each bite as he gazed out the window at passing cars. When he reached for his wallet to pay, his fingers, stiffened by both age and old injuries, fumbled with the worn leather. The wallet slipped, sending a cascade of coins across the floor. The metallic clinking cut through the cafe's gentle murmur, drawing all eyes to his table. A quarter rolled in a wide arc before settling against a chair leg several feet away. "I'm sorry," Hal murmured, his face flushing as he attempted to stand. His knee locked painfully, forcing him to grip the table edge. The college students at the nearby table fell silent, watching as the elderly man struggled to collect his scattered payment. Martin emerged from behind the counter, moving swiftly toward the commotion. Rather than helping, he stood over Hal with arms crossed, his expression hard. "Sir, you're disrupting my customers," he said, voice deliberately loud. "If you can't handle simple tasks like paying your bill, maybe eating out isn't for you." Hal looked up, surprise flashing across his face at the hostility. "I apologize for the mess," he said quietly. "My hands aren't what they used to be." Martin's eyes flicked to the silver star. "That fancy medal doesn't entitle you to special treatment here. Not everyone thinks playing soldier makes you a hero." The cafe went completely silent. A woman at a nearby table gasped. "Some of us lost family because of wars that didn't need fighting," Martin continued, his voice taking on an edge that revealed years of buried resentment. "You've made enough of a scene. I think it's time for you to leave." Hal straightened slowly, his weathered face a mask of dignity despite the public rebuke. But the slight tremor in his hand as he reached for his cap betrayed his hurt. This wasn't the first time he'd faced disrespect since returning from Vietnam decades ago, but the sting hadn't lessened with time. "I understand," he said simply. He placed a $20 bill on the table, far more than his meal cost, and turned toward the door. The other patrons watched in uncomfortable silence. An elderly couple shook their heads in disapproval. A businessman quickly averted his eyes, ashamed at his own reluctance to intervene. The college students exchanged troubled glances, one young man half rising from his seat before his friend pulled him back down. Leela stood frozen by the coffee machine, shock turning quickly to outrage. Her grandfather's words echoed in her memory. The measure of a society is how it treats those who sacrificed for it. Her job at the Copper Kettle paid her tuition. Speaking up could cost her that security. She looked at Hal's retreating back, his shoulders squared despite the humiliation, and made her decision. She untied her apron and dropped it on the counter. "That was wrong, Martin," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "That man deserves respect, not ridicule." Martin turned, surprise replacing anger. "Get back to work or don't come back at all." Lila nodded. "Then I quit." She grabbed her phone from her purse and followed Hal outside, her heart pounding. As the door closed behind her, she opened her social media app and began typing furiously, documenting exactly what had occurred. The post took only minutes to write, but spread through Willowbrook like wildfire. By evening, it had reached Fort Braddock. By nightfall, it had found Colonel Marcus Rivera, who had served alongside a young Harold McIntyre decades earlier. The colonel closed his laptop, picked up his phone, and made a call that would transform a personal insult into a communal response, one that would reshape the Copper Kettle's future and redefine Willowbrook's commitment to those who had served. "Today at the Copper Kettle, I just witnessed an elderly veteran with a silver star being humiliated for dropping coins. The owner, Martin Hargrove, publicly shamed him instead of helping. This is not how we treat those who served our country. His name is Harold McIntyre. Please share." Lila attached a photo she'd taken of Hal earlier, focused on the silver medal gleaming against his green jacket. She hit post with shaking fingers, then hurried to catch up with the veteran. Within an hour, her post had been shared 200 times. By dinner, that number exceeded 2,000. Comments flooded in. "My grandfather was a Marine. This makes me sick. Boycott the Copper Kettle." Harold McIntyre? The Harold McIntyre who saved his entire platoon? Local news outlets messaged Lila requesting interviews. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications as Willowbrook residents expressed their outrage. The story jumped from Facebook to Twitter, then to Instagram, each platform amplifying the message. At the VFW hall across town, phones lit up as veterans alerted each other to the incident. Men and women who had served in various conflicts gathered around screens, their expressions hardening as they read about the disrespect shown to one of their own. "I've known Hal for 20 years, said retired Sergeant James Wilson. "Quietest hero you'll ever meet. Never talks about what he did to earn that medal." Meanwhile, civilian supporters organized. The military families of Willowbrook, parents, spouses, and children of those who served, coordinated their response through group chats and phone calls. A high school teacher assigned her students to write letters about respect for veterans. A local radio host devoted his evening program to discussing the incident, his normally jovial tone replaced with simmering anger. At Fort Braddock, Colonel Marcus Rivera was reviewing training schedules when his aide entered with a tablet. "Sir, you need to see this." Rivera scanned the post, his expression darkening. He enlarged the photo of Hal, studying the familiar face he hadn't seen in years. "McIntyre," he murmured. "We served together in 71. He reached for his phone, dialing a number from memory. "Major Phillips? Rivera here. Remember our conversation about community relations? I think we have an opportunity tomorrow morning. Alert the motor pool. I need 6 Jeeps at 0800. Have you ever witnessed someone disrespecting a veteran? Or perhaps you've seen an incredible act of honor toward those who served? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your stories help remind us all of the importance of treating our veterans with the dignity they deserve. And if you know a veteran, take a moment today to thank them for their service. Small acts of appreciation mean more than you might realize. Martin Hargrove arrived at the Copper Kettle at 5:30 a.m., just as he had for 15 years. He unlocked the front door, flipped on the lights, and began the morning ritual, brewing coffee, checking inventory, prepping the kitchen. His movements were automatic, practiced. Only the occasional glance at his phone betrayed any concern about yesterday's incident. The first customers usually arrived by 6:15, but today the cafe remained empty. 6:30 came and went, then 7. By 8 o'clock, Martin had served only 3 people, all travelers passing through, unaware of yesterday's events. Slow morning, he remarked to his cook, trying to sound casual. He'd already called 2 waitresses to tell them not to come in, including Lila's replacement. Probably just the weather. But the skies were clear, and Martin knew the empty seats had nothing to do with rain. Still, he wiped down the already clean counter, rearranged pastries in the display case, and pretended this was just another day. At precisely 9:03 a.m., the first rumble of engines echoed down Main Street. Martin glanced up, then froze as an olive-green military jeep rolled into view. Behind it came another, and another. 6 jeeps in total formed a procession, moving with deliberate slowness past the cafe windows. They pulled into the parking lot in perfect formation, surrounding the copper kettle on 3 sides. Engines cut simultaneously, leaving an expectant silence. Then, as if choreographed, doors opened and boots hit pavement. Men and women in full military dress uniforms stepped out. Behind them emerged veterans in civilian clothes, some wearing caps or jackets identifying their service branches. From the lead jeep, a tall figure in a colonel's uniform surveyed the scene before nodding once, decisively. Inside, Martin's remaining customers pressed against windows. The cook emerged from the kitchen, wiping his hands on his apron. "What's happening?" he asked. Martin couldn't answer. His throat had gone dry. The bell above the door chimed as Colonel Marcus Rivera entered, his posture ramrod straight, cap tucked precisely under his arm. 2 junior officers flanked him. The medals on Rivera's chest caught the morning light, a visual reminder of decades of service. "Mr. Hargrove?" Rivera's voice carried throughout the cafe without him raising it. Martin stepped forward. "That's me. Colonel Marcus Rivera, United States Army." He didn't offer his hand. "Yesterday, you asked a decorated combat veteran to leave your establishment after publicly humiliating him. That veteran, Master Sergeant Harold McIntyre, earned the Silver Star by carrying 3 wounded men to safety under enemy fire. He took 2 bullets doing so." Martin swallowed hard. "Look, I didn't know." "You didn't need to know," Rivera interrupted, his tone level but unyielding. "The medal he wears tells you everything necessary, that he put his life on the line for his country and his fellow soldiers. That alone deserves respect." The colonel glanced around the nearly empty cafe. "I notice your business is quiet today. Perhaps Willowbrook has already delivered its verdict on your behavior." The door chimed again and again. Veterans began filing in, some walking with canes, others with prosthetic limbs, young and old alike. They moved with purpose, filling seats methodically. Within minutes, every table was occupied. A young lieutenant approached the counter. "Coffee. Black. For everyone, please." Martin hesitated, then nodded to his cook, who began filling cups. The veterans sat in disciplined silence, their presence alone delivering a message more powerful than words. Some wore their medals. Others simply carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of those who had served. Among them, in the center table, sat Harold McIntyre. His hands still trembled slightly as he held his coffee cup, but his eyes were clear and steady as they met Martin's across the room. What happened next transformed the silent protest into something unexpected. A young woman in civilian clothes approached Hal's table. She set down a small velvet box beside his coffee cup. "My father couldn't be here today," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He served with you in 71. He wanted you to have this." Hal opened the box to reveal a combat infantry badge. "He said to tell you that you were the bravest man he ever knew." Hal's composure finally broke. A single tear tracked down his weathered cheek as he clasped the woman's hand in both of his. Throughout the cafe, veterans stood in silent salute, not to the medal or badge, but to the man, to the sacrifice, to everything words could never fully capture. The image was striking in its simplicity and devastating in its power. Dozens of warriors, spanning generations, united in respect for one of their own who had been disrespected in this very space. Martin Hargrove, watching from behind his counter, finally understood the full weight of what he had done and what these men and women had done for him. By noon, news vans lined Main Street. Reporters positioned themselves outside the copper kettle, capturing footage of uniformed personnel entering and exiting. The local Willowbrook Gazette ran a front-page headline, "Military Stands United After Veteran Humiliated." Regional stations interrupted programming for live coverage, and national outlets picked up the story by evening. Social media amplified every detail. Video clips of the military jeeps arriving garnered millions of views. Hashtags like Respect Our Veterans and Copper Kettle Shame trended across platforms. Local businesses posted signs declaring "Veterans Welcome Here" in their windows, a clear counter-message to Martin's actions. City council members issued statements condemning the incident. The mayor, herself a Navy veteran, announced plans for a town-wide Veterans Appreciation Day. What began as one man's moment of cruelty had evolved into a community-wide examination of how it treated those who served. Harold McIntyre had spent decades avoiding attention for his military service. Now, reluctantly thrust into public view, he found himself fielding interview requests and receiving letters from strangers across the country. "I never wanted this fuss," he told a local reporter, his voice soft but firm. "What happened to me happens to veterans every day. The difference is someone noticed this time." When asked about his Silver Star, Hal deflected. "It wasn't about me, it was about bringing my men home." This humility only endeared him further to the public, who recognized authentic heroism when they saw it. 3 days after the incident, Martin Hargrove issued a statement through his lawyer. "I regret my actions toward Mr. McIntyre and apologize for any offense caused. The Copper Kettle has always welcomed all customers, and this was an isolated incident during a stressful day." The community immediately recognized the hollow nature of the apology. No personal responsibility, no acknowledgement of the deeper disrespect shown, no genuine remorse. Customers stayed away. Suppliers began delaying deliveries. Staff quit, unwilling to associate with the cafe's damaged reputation. Martin reduced hours, then days of operation, watching helplessly as his 15-year business collapsed around him. 6 weeks after the incident, a simple sign appeared on the Copper Kettle's door. "Closed permanently, building for sale." Martin avoided public appearances, his reputation in Willowbrook irreparably damaged. Former friends crossed the street to avoid him. His membership at the local business association was quietly revoked. The man who had once been a respected community fixture now lived as an outcast, all from a single moment of unchecked contempt. The swift downfall of the Copper Kettle served as a powerful reminder. Reputations built over decades can collapse in minutes. Martin's business hadn't failed because of economic factors or competition. It died because he had violated a core value of the community he served. In an age where respect can be publicly measured, quantified, and judged, his actions revealed a character flaw his neighbors couldn't forgive. The lesson resonated far beyond Willowbrook. How we treat others, especially those who have sacrificed for us, defines who we are. No success can survive when built upon the foundation of disrespect. 3 months after the Copper Kettle closed, a sold sign appeared on the empty building. Speculation ran through Willowbrook about who had purchased the property. The mystery ended when Colonel Rivera called a press conference on the sidewalk outside. "Today, I'm proud to announce that a coalition of veterans from Fort Braddock and the Willowbrook VFW has purchased this building," he announced, standing before a group of uniformed and retired military personnel. "We pooled our resources because we believe in transforming moments of disrespect into opportunities for education and community." The purchase hadn't been easy. Many veterans lived on fixed incomes, contributing what they could. $5 here, $20 there. Others organized fundraisers. A local attorney handled the paperwork pro bono. The joint effort transformed individual contributions into collective action, demonstrating the military value of unity in achieving a mission. Workers soon filled the building, renovating the interior while preserving its charm. The kitchen was modernized, walls repainted, and new furniture installed. But this would be more than just another cafe. "We're creating Hal's Place, part restaurant, part Veterans Resource Center, part community gathering space," explained Major Sophia Chen, who headed the renovation committee. "Veterans can come for free coffee, job assistance, or simply conversation with others who understand their experiences. Civilians are welcome to enjoy meals while learning about military service through displays and conversations." The grand opening drew hundreds. Inside, the walls displayed military memorabilia donated by local families, photographs, letters, medals, each with a story card explaining its significance. A children's corner offered books about service and sacrifice, written at age-appropriate levels. The menu featured comfort food at reasonable prices, with discounts for active military and veterans. Harold McIntyre initially resisted having the establishment named after him. "I'm no more deserving than any other veteran," he insisted. "This should honor all who served." But the community persisted, recognizing that Hal's dignified response to humiliation embodied the values they wished to celebrate. Eventually, he agreed under one condition, that he could volunteer rather than be merely a namesake. So 3 days a week, visitors found Hal at a corner table, ready to share stories with anyone interested, especially children and teenagers who had never met a Vietnam veteran. "The worst thing for any veteran is to feel forgotten," Hal explained to a high school group. "When we talk across generations, we keep the understanding of sacrifice alive." His quiet wisdom and unwavering kindness transformed him from a victim of disrespect into a living example of how to respond to mistreatment with grace, a lesson that extended far beyond military service. Above the entrance hung a bronze plaque, unveiled during a ceremony attended by veterans spanning conflicts from World War II to Afghanistan. The inscription read, "In honor of those who served, and in remembrance that respect is a duty we all share." Here we recognize that behind every uniform is a person, behind every medal is a story, and behind every veteran is a sacrifice worthy of our gratitude. Beneath these words was a simple quote, "How we treat each other reveals who we truly are." The plaque became a touchstone. Many patrons gently tapped it upon entering, a small gesture acknowledging its deeper meaning. Has someone in your community stood up for veterans or transformed a negative experience into something positive? We'd love to hear these stories of respect and restoration. Share them in the comments below or tag us in your social media posts. Every story of honor recognized and disrespect confronted helps build a culture that values those who served. Your experiences might inspire others to create similar spaces of respect in their own communities. Remember, it's not just about thanking veterans for their service. It's about creating environments where they feel truly valued. 5 years passed since the military jeeps surrounded the copper kettle. What began as a moment of disrespect had transformed Willowbrook's relationship with its veterans. The annual Respect and Honor Festival now drew visitors from neighboring states. Local schools implemented programs where students interviewed veterans and documented their stories for the town's historical archives. Businesses displayed military-friendly certifications earned through hiring practices and accessibility accommodations. Martin Hargrove eventually moved away, but his cautionary tale remained. New residents heard the story within days of arriving, not told with malice, but as context for why the community held certain values sacred. The incident had become a defining moment in Willowbrook's identity, a clear line marking when the town had collectively decided that honoring veterans would be more than just words on Memorial Day. Hal's Place evolved beyond its founder's vision. The cafe section remained busy from dawn until evening, serving comfort food that rivaled the copper kettle's former offerings. The community room hosted support groups, job fairs, and educational workshops. Veterans suffering from PTSD found a safe haven where their experiences were understood without explanation. A scholarship fund, established in Hal's name, sent 2 Willowbrook High School graduates to college each year. The only requirement, recipients had to complete community service hours at veterans' facilities. Most importantly, Hal's Place bridged the civilian-military divide. Children learned to recognize different service medals. Teenagers heard first-hand accounts from recent combat veterans. Adults gained deeper understanding of what service members carried home from war, both visible and invisible burdens. The true lesson of Willowbrook's story transcended the military context. It demonstrated how communities can respond when core values are violated, not with matching disrespect, but with dignified, united action that reinforces shared principles. Honor, they discovered, wasn't merely about recognizing achievements or status. It was about acknowledging human worth and sacrifice, about seeing beyond appearances to the stories people carry. Respect wasn't simply politeness, but active recognition of others' journeys. These principles extended beyond veterans to shape how the town treated elderly residents, people with disabilities, and anyone whose contributions might otherwise go unnoticed or undervalued. When Colonel Rivera revisited Hal's place on its 5th anniversary, he reflected on what had changed since that morning when military jeeps lined Main Street. "We didn't come to punish," he told the gathered crowd. "We came to remind everyone that when you disrespect one veteran, you disrespect us all. But more importantly, when you honor one veteran properly, you help heal wounds carried by many." Harold McIntyre, now in his 80s but still volunteering weekly, added his perspective. "Sometimes standing tall means helping others stand." That day, I learned I wasn't alone, even when I felt most isolated. That knowledge belongs to every veteran who walks through these doors. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel for more powerful accounts of respect, honor, and standing up for what's right. Your engagement helps us continue sharing these essential stories that remind us all of our responsibility to one another. Leave a comment about a veteran who has impacted your life, or a moment when you witnessed someone standing up for respect. Together, we can ensure that the sacrifices of our veterans are never forgotten and always honored.